The desperate message. Commander Zethkar of the Volani Federation stared at the blue planet rotating slowly on his ship's main screen. Earth, the third planet in this unremarkable solar system that the galaxy's databases barely mentioned. His 3 hearts beat rapidly as he considered what he was about to do. "Sir, are you certain about this?" asked his second-in-command, Officer Mira Lin. Her purple skin had turned pale with worry. "The humans are barely a level 2 civilization. They haven't even achieved faster-than-light travel yet." Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. "We have no choice. The hegemony has destroyed 17 of our colonies in the past month. Our own military is scattered, and the other advanced species refuse to help us. They say it's not their problem." He paused, looking at the damage reports scrolling across his console. "The humans are our last hope." The Volani had been running for 3 weeks now. Their once mighty federation, spanning 47 star systems, was crumbling under the relentless assault of the Kronan hegemony. The Kronan were a warrior species that conquered everything in their path, enslaving entire populations and strip-mining worlds for resources. "But, sir," Mira Lin continued, "what could humans possibly do? Our intelligence reports show they still fight wars with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They barely understand quantum physics." Zethkar sighed, a sound like wind through crystalline caves. "Perhaps that's exactly what we need. Every advanced species thinks in the same patterns. We use energy shields, plasma weapons, and quantum disruptors. We follow the same tactical doctrines taught in every military academy across the galaxy. Maybe someone who thinks differently can see what we cannot." The truth was, Zethkar was desperate. The Kronan had superior numbers, better technology, and a ruthless efficiency that had overwhelmed every defense the Volani could mount. Traditional warfare had failed completely. The other members of the Galactic Council had offered sympathy, but no real aid. They were either too afraid of the Kronan or too focused on protecting their own territories. "Open a communication channel to the planet's surface," Zethkar ordered. "Broad spectrum, all languages we have on file." The communications officer, a young Volani named Korthan, worked quickly at his station. "Channel open, sir. We're broadcasting to their entire planet." Zethkar took a deep breath and began recording his message. "People of Earth, I am Commander Zethkar of the Volani Federation. We come to you not as conquerors or explorers, but as refugees seeking aid. Our civilization is under attack by a merciless enemy called the Kronan hegemony. They have destroyed our worlds and enslaved our people. We have nowhere else to turn." He paused, watching Earth continue its slow rotation. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that aliens existed, let alone that one species was now begging for their help. "We do not ask this lightly," he continued. "We know your species is young and has not yet joined the galactic community. But we have studied your history, and we see something unique in humanity. You have a capacity for innovation and determination that defies logic. You survive in conditions that would kill most species. You adapt to any environment. You never truly surrender." Down on Earth's surface, the message was being received by every radio telescope, satellite dish, and communication array on the planet. Scientists at SETI were frantically trying to verify that this wasn't an elaborate hoax. Military commanders were being awakened from sleep. World leaders were being pulled from meetings and dinners. Dr. Sarah Chen, director of the Arecibo Observatory, was the first to confirm the signal's authenticity. "This is real," she announced to her stunned team. "The signal is coming from a ship in our solar system. The mathematical proofs they've included are beyond our current understanding, but they're consistent and logical." Within hours, the message had reached every major government on Earth. The United Nations held an emergency session. Military leaders huddled in secure bunkers. Scientists worked around the clock to decode every piece of data the aliens had transmitted, along with their plea for help. Back on the Volani ship, Zethkar waited anxiously for any response. His crew monitored Earth's electromagnetic emissions, watching as the planet's communication networks lit up with activity. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're detecting massive increases in their communication traffic. Military frequencies are particularly active." "Are they responding to us?" Zethkar asked. "Not directly, sir, but they're clearly reacting to our message. Their level of activity suggests the entire planet is now aware of our presence." Mira Lin approached her commander's station. "Sir, I've been reviewing their military capabilities based on our scans. They have thousands of nuclear weapons, but their delivery systems are primitive. Their most advanced aircraft can't even leave their atmosphere reliably. How could they possibly help us against the Cronin?" Zethkar studied the data streams coming from Earth. "Look at their response time," he said. "We broadcast our message 6 hours ago. Already their entire planet is coordinating a response. When the Council of Worlds received news of our first colony's destruction, it took them 3 weeks just to schedule a meeting to discuss it." The communications console suddenly beeped with an incoming transmission. Korthan looked up in surprise. "Sir, we're receiving a direct response from the planet's surface." "On screen," Zethkar ordered. The main display showed a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform, sitting at a desk with flags behind him. The human looked directly into the camera with sharp, determined eyes. "Commander Zethkar," the human began in clear, measured tones, "I am General Marcus Harrison, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the United Earth Defense Coalition. We have received and verified your message. On behalf of humanity, I want you to know that we do not abandon our friends." Zethkar felt his heart skip a beat. Friends? They had just met, and this human was already calling them friends? The general continued. "You have asked for our aid, and you shall have it. We may be a young species, but we have learned hard lessons about standing up to bullies and tyrants. Evil succeeds only when good beings do nothing to stop it." The transmission shifted to show images from Earth's surface. Massive factories were already being retooled. Scientists were working in laboratories around the clock. Military forces were mobilizing on a scale not seen since World War II. "We are immediately beginning production of weapons and equipment based on the technical specifications you provided about your enemy," General Harrison explained. "Our scientists are working to understand your technology so we can better assist you. We are also preparing volunteer forces to join your fight." "Volunteer forces?" Zethkar exchanged glances with his bridge crew. The humans were actually offering to send their own people to fight and die for a species they had never heard of until 6 hours ago. The general's expression grew harder. "Commander, you said your enemy shows no mercy and enslaves entire populations. You said they destroy worlds and kill civilians. This makes them our enemy too, because humanity has a simple rule. We do not tolerate bullies, anywhere, ever." The transmission showed more images of human activity. Shipyards that had been building commercial vessels were now switching to military production. Universities were suspending normal classes so their students could work on relevant research. Even children were collecting scrap metal in organized drives. "We estimate we can have our first wave of supplies and equipment ready for transport in 72 hours, the general continued. "Our brightest minds are working on solutions to problems your people haven't been able to solve. Sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what's needed." Zethkar found himself struggling to speak. In galactic society, helping another species usually meant lengthy negotiations, trade agreements, and political considerations. The humans had just committed their entire planet to helping strangers, and they were doing it for free. "General Harrison," Zethkar finally managed to say, "your offer is overwhelming. But you must understand, the Cronin hegemony is incredibly dangerous. They have weapons that can crack planets. They have conquered civilizations far more advanced than yours." Many of your people could die in this fight." The human general's expression didn't change. "Commander, let me tell you something about humanity. We have a saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Your people are suffering, and that makes this our fight too." The transmission showed scenes of human history. Soldiers storming beaches under enemy fire, civilians hiding refugees from persecution, ordinary people standing up to dictators and oppressors throughout the centuries. "We've fought tyrants before," General Harrison said. "We faced enemies who seemed unstoppable, who had better weapons and more resources. And you know what? We won, because we never gave up and we never fought alone. No one stands alone against evil while humanity draws breath." Mira Lin whispered to her commander, "Sir, I don't think they understand what they're offering to do." But Zethkar was beginning to suspect that maybe, just maybe, it was the rest of the galaxy that didn't understand what humans were capable of. He had come here hoping for some small assistance, perhaps a few technological insights or a safe harbor. Instead, he had found an entire species willing to go to war for strangers. "General," Zethkar said, "what do you need from us?" The human smiled grimly. "Everything you can tell us about the enemy, their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. We're going to study them like we've never studied anything before, and then we're going to find ways to beat them that they've never seen coming." Over the next several hours, the Vallani transmitted everything they knew about the Cronin hegemony to Earth's databases. Human scientists and military analysts pored over the information with an intensity that amazed the watching aliens. The humans asked questions that no one had thought to ask before. They wanted to know about Cronin psychology, their social structure, their supply lines, their communication methods. They asked about things that seemed completely unrelated to military matters. What the Cronin ate, how they reproduced, what their art looked like, what they feared. "Sir," Cortan reported, "we're receiving thousands of communication requests from all over their planet. Scientists wanting to collaborate, military leaders requesting tactical information, even civilians offering to help in any way they can." Zethkar looked at the flood of messages appearing on his screens. Offers of food, medical supplies, raw materials, technical expertise, and even personal messages of support and encouragement. An entire world had just learned that aliens existed, and their first instinct was to help. "Mira Lin," he said quietly, "I think we may have found something the Cronin have never encountered before." "What's that, sir?" "Hope." The human response. 3 days after first contact, Zethkar could barely believe what he was seeing through his ship's sensors. Earth had transformed into a massive war production facility almost overnight. Every major industrial center was working around the clock, retooling factories and assembly lines with a speed that defied galactic understanding of how civilizations operated. Dr. Sarah Chen had been appointed as the chief science liaison between humans and Vallani. She stood in the makeshift command center that had been built in record time beneath NORAD, surrounded by screens showing production facilities across the globe. "Commander Zethkar," she said during their daily communication, "our weapons teams have been studying your reports on Cronin armor and shielding. We think we've found something interesting." Zethkar leaned forward in his command chair. Human enthusiasm had become infectious among his crew, and even his most pessimistic officers now watched these daily briefings with growing excitement. "What have you discovered, Dr. Chen?" "Your people have been fighting the Cronin with energy weapons, plasma cannons, and quantum disruptors, correct? All very advanced, very sophisticated." "Yes. The standard armaments of any civilized military force." Dr. Chen smiled. "Well, we're not civilized by galactic standards, are we? We've been looking at this problem differently. Cronin energy shields are designed to deflect or absorb directed energy attacks. But what about kinetic weapons?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Kinetic weapons? You mean Throwing rocks? Not exactly rocks, Dr. Chen laughed, but the principle is similar. We've designed what we're calling penetrator rounds, dense metal projectiles accelerated to incredible velocities using electromagnetic rails. No energy signature for their shields to lock onto, just pure kinetic force. She gestured to a screen showing test footage. A tungsten rod, no bigger than a human finger, punched through 3 feet of the strongest armor humanity had ever created like it was paper. But there's more, she continued. We've been studying Cronin battle tactics from your records. They rely heavily on their shields and advanced sensors. So we've developed something we call chaff rounds, projectiles that explode into millions of tiny metal fragments. It doesn't hurt their ships directly, but it blinds their sensors and overwhelms their targeting systems. Mira Lin, who was monitoring the conversation from her station, looked amazed. Sir, that's actually brilliant. Our weapons are so sophisticated that we never considered using simple kinetic force. General Harrison joined the transmission from the Pentagon. Commander, we've got more than just weapons for you. Our logistics teams have been studying your supply situation. You've been fighting this war the way galactic militaries always fight, with long supply lines stretching back to your remaining colonies. Yes, Zethkar confirmed. It's how warfare has been conducted for millennia. Established bases provide resources to frontline forces. Well, humans learned a long time ago that supply lines are vulnerabilities, the general explained. So we've designed something different, self-sufficient combat platforms that can operate independently for months at a time, ships that can manufacture their own ammunition, grow their own food, and repair themselves using raw materials found in any asteroid field. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. If Vallani forces could operate without supply lines, the Cronin's favorite tactic of cutting off enemy resources would become useless. But how? He asked. The complexity of manufacturing military equipment requires massive industrial facilities. Dr. Chen activated another screen showing compact 3D printing systems. We call it distributed manufacturing. Instead of building everything in one place and shipping it out, we build small factories that can make what you need, where you need it, when you need it. Over the next few hours, the humans revealed innovation after innovation. They had studied every aspect of the Cronin war machine and found unconventional solutions to each problem. Where the Cronin used predictable attack patterns based on galactic military doctrine, humans had developed something they called asymmetric warfare, fighting in ways the enemy wouldn't expect, using tactics that seemed chaotic but followed a deeper logic. Where the Cronin relied on advanced AI systems to coordinate their fleets, humans proposed using simple, resilient communication networks that couldn't be hacked or jammed. Where the Cronin used fear and intimidation to break enemy morale, humans had developed psychological warfare techniques designed to turn those same emotions back against their users. The key, explained Colonel Maria Santos, the human military psychologist who had been studying Cronin behavior patterns, is understanding that the Cronin see themselves as the ultimate predators. They've never faced prey that fights back effectively. They're not prepared for an enemy that refuses to be intimidated. But it wasn't just military innovations. Dr. James Wright, a human sociologist, had been studying the reports of Cronin-occupied worlds. Commander, we've identified what we believe is a critical weakness in their entire empire. What weakness? Zethkar asked. They rule through fear and oppression, but they don't actually control their conquered populations very effectively. They take the resources they want and leave skeleton crews to keep order. That means millions of enslaved beings who would rebel if they thought they had a chance. The human plan was ambitious beyond anything the Vallani could have imagined. Instead of just fighting the Cronin military, humans wanted to liberate every occupied world simultaneously, turning the hegemony's own subjects against them. We've developed what we call liberation packages, explained Dr. Wright. Crates of weapons, communication equipment, and tactical manuals that can be dropped on occupied worlds. The weapons are simple enough for any species to use, and the manuals are written to teach basic guerrilla warfare tactics. Zethkar felt his heart racing. You want to arm every enslaved population in Cronin space? Not just arm them, General Harrison interjected. Train them, coordinate them, and support them. We're talking about a simultaneous uprising across dozens of worlds. The Cronin won't be able to respond to everything at once. The scope of human ambition was staggering. In galactic warfare, conflicts were typically fought between military forces while civilian populations waited to see who would rule them next. Humans were proposing to turn every civilian into a potential soldier, every occupied world into a battlefield. But the logistics alone, Miralyn started to object, are completely manageable, finished Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Foster, the human naval officer who had been working on fleet coordination. We've run the numbers. Using distributed manufacturing and pre-positioned supply caches, we can support liberation movements across the entire hegemony. Dr. Chen brought up a galactic map showing Cronin territory. We've identified 17 key systems that are critical to their infrastructure. If we can simultaneously disrupt operations at these locations while supporting rebellions on occupied worlds, their entire empire becomes unstable. The plan was audacious, complex, and utterly unprecedented in galactic history. It relied on coordination across dozens of species, precise timing, and tactics that no military academy had ever taught. Commander, General Harrison said seriously, we know this seems impossible, but humans have done impossible things before. The key is that we're not trying to beat the Cronin at their own game. We're changing the rules entirely. Zethkar looked around his bridge at his crew. Every Villani was staring at the tactical displays with expressions of amazement and growing hope. These weren't just weapons and strategies the humans were offering. This was an entirely new way of thinking about warfare itself. General, Zethkar said slowly, your people continue to amaze us. But coordination of this scale, it would require a command structure more complex than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Already built, replied Admiral Jessica Thompson from her position at the newly constructed Joint Operations Center. We've created a command network that can coordinate actions across multiple star systems in real time. It's based on principles we developed for managing global internet communications, scaled up for interstellar distances. The humans had been busy in more ways than just weapons development. They had established communication protocols, supply chains, training programs, and coordination systems. They had created an entire military infrastructure from nothing in less than a week. Our first volunteer units are ready for deployment, General Harrison announced. 5,000 Marines specifically trained for fighting in alien environments, equipped with weapons designed to be effective against Cronin technology. Volunteers. Zethkar still couldn't quite grasp the concept. These humans were willing to leave their home planet, possibly forever, to fight for people they had never met against an enemy they had learned about just days ago. Why? He found himself asking. Why are your people willing to risk so much for strangers? The command center fell quiet for a moment. Then Dr. Chen stepped forward. Commander, let me tell you about something that happened in our history. During one of our global wars, an entire army unit was trapped behind enemy lines. They sent out a radio message asking for help. The response came from units all across the battlefield. We're coming. Hold on. Some of those rescue units fought through impossible odds to reach their trapped comrades. Many died in the attempt. She paused, looking directly into the camera. That's who we are, Commander. When someone calls for help, we come running. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, friend or stranger. Evil is evil, and it needs to be stopped wherever it exists. General Harrison nodded. Besides, Commander, we've learned something important from studying your reports about the Cronin. They don't just enslave other species. They eliminate them entirely once they've taken what they want. That means Earth would be a target eventually anyway. We're not just helping you. We're defending ourselves. The logic was sound, but Zethkar suspected there was more to it than that. These humans seemed to have an instinctive need to protect others, to stand against oppression wherever they found it. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now," said General Harrison with a grim smile, "we go to war. But not the kind of war the Cronin are expecting. We're going to show them what happens when you pick a fight with a species that never learned how to quit." The Human War. 6 months after humanity joined the war against the Cronin hegemony, the galaxy would never be the same. What had begun as a desperate plea for aid had transformed into the largest liberation movement in galactic history. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of the Terran-Vallani hybrid warship Defiance, watching as the final Cronin stronghold in the Xerion system crumbled under sustained bombardment. The ship itself was a marvel of human engineering principles applied to Vallani technology, faster, more durable, and more adaptable than anything either species could have built alone. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim, one of the human officers who had volunteered for extended deep space duty, "we're receiving surrender requests from the remaining Cronin vessels." Surrender. The word had barely existed in Cronin vocabulary 6 months ago. The hegemony had built their empire on the principle that they never retreated, never gave up, never showed weakness. Now their fleets were surrendering regularly. "Accept their surrender," Zethkar ordered. "Standard protocols, disarm their weapons, confiscate military equipment, and transfer their personnel to the rehabilitation centers." The rehabilitation centers were another human innovation that had shocked the galaxy. Instead of executing captured enemies or keeping them as prisoners of war, humans had insisted on trying to reform them. The idea that conquerors could be taught to become productive members of society was so radical that even the Vallani had initially resisted it. But it worked. Dr. Angela Rodriguez, the human psychologist who had designed the program, had discovered that most Cronin soldiers were themselves victims of their society's brutal conditioning. Given proper treatment and education, many chose to abandon their old ways entirely. Admiral Chen, now commanding the combined human-alien fleet, appeared on the communication screen from her flagship, Liberation. "Commander, we're getting reports from across the sector. The last 3 Cronin administrative centers have fallen. The Xerion resistance movement has successfully taken control of their orbital platforms." The resistance movements had been the key to everything. When the war began, humans had immediately started dropping supply packages on every Cronin-occupied world. The packages contained simple but effective weapons, communication equipment, and detailed manuals on guerrilla warfare tactics. The manuals had been written by human military historians who had studied every successful resistance movement in Earth's history. They contained lessons learned from centuries of humans fighting against oppressive regimes, adapted for alien species and alien environments. But more than just weapons and tactics, the humans had provided something the enslaved populations had lost: hope. Every package included messages from Earth explaining that they were not alone, that help was coming, and that freedom was possible. The results had exceeded everyone's expectations. Species that had been crushed under Cronin rule for decades suddenly began fighting back. Sabotage operations disrupted supply lines. Communication networks were hacked and used to coordinate resistance activities. Critical infrastructure was damaged or destroyed. The Cronin, who had never faced organized resistance on such a scale, found their empire crumbling from within while human-led forces attacked from without. "Status report on Operation Liberation," Zethkar requested. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, the human tactical officer, consulted his displays. 47 worlds have been completely liberated. Resistance movements are active on another 31 occupied planets. Cronin military effectiveness has dropped by an estimated 78% due to the need to garrison previously secure territory. The numbers told the story. The Cronin hegemony, which had seemed unstoppable just months ago, was falling apart. But it wasn't happening through traditional military conquest. It was happening because the humans had changed the fundamental nature of the conflict. "Sir," reported Mira Lin from her position at the intelligence station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council." Zethkar wasn't surprised. The Council had been sending increasingly urgent messages as reports of the war's progress reached them. What the humans and their allies were accomplishing was forcing the galaxy's political establishment to reconsider everything they thought they knew about warfare, diplomacy, and civilization itself. "On screen," he ordered. The display showed the familiar crystalline form of Councillor Vexithara, the Altarian who served as the Council's current chairman. Her usually calm demeanor showed signs of strain. "Commander Zethkar, I must speak with you urgently about this situation." "What situation would that be, Councillor?" "The complete destruction of established galactic order." Vexithara's crystal structure flickered with agitation. "Your human allies are conducting warfare in ways that violate every treaty and convention we have established over millions of years." Zethkar kept his expression neutral. "In what way?" "Councillor, they are arming civilian populations. They are teaching primitive species military tactics. They are treating conquered enemies with rehabilitation instead of punishment. The precedent this sets is catastrophic." Behind Zethkar, he could hear Lieutenant Kim quietly translating for the human crew members. Several of them were struggling not to laugh. "Councillor," Zethkar replied carefully, "the humans are ending slavery and oppression across multiple star systems. They are liberating billions of beings who had given up hope of ever seeing freedom again. I fail to see the problem." "The problem," Vexithara said sharply, "is that this approach could be applied anywhere. If word spreads that civilian populations can successfully resist military occupation, it could destabilize governments across the galaxy." And there it was, the real reason the Galactic Council was concerned. It wasn't about military conventions or diplomatic protocol. It was about power. Many council members ruled through the same principles the Cronin used, just more subtly. The idea that oppressed populations could fight back and win terrified them. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. "Commander, with your permission, I'd like to address the Council directly." Zethkar nodded. "Admiral Chen, you have the floor." Chen's image appeared on the screen beside the councillors. Her expression was respectful, but firm. "Councillor Vexithara, I understand your concerns about precedent, but I think you're missing the bigger picture." "And what picture is that?" "Human. The galaxy is changing whether you want it to or not. Information travels faster now than ever before. Species are learning about each other, comparing their situations, asking why some beings live in freedom while others live in chains. You can either adapt to that change or be swept away by it." Vexithara's structure flashed with annoyance. "You speak of matters you do not understand. Galactic civilization requires order, hierarchy, structure. Without these things, we would have chaos." "Councillor," Chen replied calmly, "Earth has hundreds of different governments, thousands of different cultures, and billions of people who disagree about almost everything. Somehow we manage to avoid chaos. The secret isn't imposing order from above, it's teaching people to create order from below." On the tactical displays around the bridge, more reports were coming in. Another Cronin fleet had surrendered. 3 more worlds had declared independence. A group of former hegemony species had announced they were forming a mutual defense alliance. "The war is nearly over, Councillor," Zethkar said quietly. The Cronin hegemony has lost the ability to maintain control over their territory. Their military is in full retreat. Within weeks, they will be reduced to a handful of core systems. And then what? Vexithera demanded. What happens to all these liberated worlds? Who will govern them? Who will maintain order? Admiral Chen smiled. They will govern themselves. That's the whole point. The concept seemed to physically disturb the counselor. Impossible. Primitive species cannot be trusted with self-governance. They lack the experience, the wisdom, the cultural development necessary for civilized society. With respect, counselor, interrupted Dr. Rodriguez, joining the conversation from her position aboard the medical ship, Mercy. That's exactly the kind of thinking that creates problems like the Cronin hegemony in the first place. Dr. Rodriguez had been working with liberated populations for months now, helping them deal with the psychological trauma of occupation while preparing them for independence. Every species we've encountered has their own forms of wisdom, their own approaches to solving problems. The galaxy isn't improved by forcing everyone to think the same way. The counselor's form flickered rapidly. Dr. Rodriguez, you cannot simply overturn millions of years of galactic development in a few months. Why not? Asked Lieutenant Kim from her position at the communications console. All eyes turned to the young human officer, who continued without hesitation. I mean, if something has been wrong for millions of years, isn't it about time someone fixed it? The simple logic of the statement seemed to stun Vexithara into silence. General Harrison joined the conversation from Earth. Counselor, let me ask you something. Before humans arrived, how many species in the galaxy lived in freedom, and how many lived under some form of oppression or control? That is not a relevant question. I think it's the only relevant question, Harrison replied. Because from where we sit, it looks like the galactic order you're talking about was really just a system for keeping most beings powerless while a few species controlled everything. Sir, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, we're receiving a transmission from the Cronin homeworld. Zethkar felt his heart skip. The homeworld? Are you certain? Yes, sir. It's coming directly from the capital city. High priority. Encryption codes indicate it's from their supreme leadership. This was unprecedented. Throughout the war, the Cronin leadership had remained completely silent, refusing all attempts at communication. For them to reach out now meant something significant had changed. Put it through. The display showed a Cronin unlike any they had encountered before. This one was older, with battle scars that spoke of ancient conflicts, but his posture showed defeat rather than defiance. I am War Master Thekran, Supreme Commander of what remains of the Cronin military forces, the alien said in heavily accented but clear English. I wish to speak with the human leaders who have destroyed our empire. Admiral Chen stepped forward. I am Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Forces. You wish to surrender? I wish to understand, Thekran replied. Our intelligence reports make no sense. Your species uses primitive weapons and impossible tactics. You fight for people you have never met. You show mercy to enemies who would show you none. You give away advanced technology for free. Nothing about your behavior follows any logical pattern. Chen exchanged glances with the other officers before responding. War Master. What you call illogical, we call basic decency. We help others because it's the right thing to do. We fight oppression because freedom is worth fighting for. We show mercy because we remember what it's like to be conquered and oppressed. But why? Thekran's confusion seemed genuine. What do you gain from this? Where is your profit, your territory, your tribute? We gain a galaxy where beings can live free, Chen replied simply. That's worth more than any amount of territory or tribute. The old Cronin was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. Admiral Chen, The Cronin hegemony formally surrenders to the human-led coalition. We will provide you with the locations of all our remaining military assets and will cooperate fully with your rehabilitation programs." He paused. "Perhaps it is time for us to learn a different way of living." As the transmission ended, Zethkar looked around his bridge. Human and Volani officers worked side by side, coordinating relief efforts for newly liberated worlds, planning reconstruction programs, and establishing communication networks that would help former enemies become allies. "Commander," Admiral Chen said over the comm, "we're receiving surrender offers from the last 17 Cronin strongholds. I think we can officially declare this war over." But even as celebrations began across the fleet, Zethkar knew the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had been fundamentally changed by what humans called the Liberation War. Dozens of species were free for the first time in generations. The old power structures were crumbling, and new alliances were forming. The Galactic Council would have to adapt or become irrelevant. The age of empires ruling through fear and oppression was ending. In its place, humans were helping to build something unprecedented, a galactic community based on cooperation, mutual aid, and respect for the freedom of all sentient beings. As Zethkar watched the stars through his viewport, he reflected on the desperate message he had sent to Earth just 6 months ago. He had asked for aid, never imagining that humans would take the request so seriously that they would reshape the entire galaxy in response. Humanity had kept their promise. They had come when called, fought when needed, and never abandoned their friends. The galaxy was a better place because of it.